Hello, everyone. So last time when we discussed the dictionaries, I left you with some work to be done. We have not had a chance to go over it yet. So now I would like to use some of this data that we saw in the previous video, and would like to load a dictionary that we called it homework. Maybe we should not be calling it homework. We should be calling it um, um, dictionary practice, like that. PRI, like that. So we basically gonna create a dictionary practice. And the idea here is to populate the dictionary with all these entries as we've done before. If you remember correctly, the dictionary has key and value of pairs. So the keys must always be string or a specific value that is unique to the record that you're working with, and the value could be a simple string, or it could be also um, a complex data type. It could be this way, or as we saw in the past, it was a tuple of two different elements or two different components. One of them is a phone number, and one of them is an email address. So by continuously adding elements in this fashion here, using the square bracket and then passing the keys, we will be able to populate the dictionary with these key value pairs. The value here in this case is a tuple that has two components. Clearly, we're going to be consistent because it makes sense to create a dictionary of a specific format, so you're able to manipulate and search and be able to do things in a consistent way. So now we're adding a third element. We have Ryan here, and the next element is Emma, like that. And let's see, we can enter the value for this dictionary item. The next element is Anna, like that. And we are going to pass, by having that equal sign here, we're essentially assigning the value to the right, um, to the variable to the left, to the left. And this variable here is essentially a key for a dictionary item. And it seems like we have forgotten to put some of the elements in the tuple between double quotes. That's why we had this really strange looking element here. So the last one is an element that is going to be designated for Megan, and we are going to pass the value for the phone number and the email address. So if we run this and we think that we've done everything correctly, we don't see any errors. And to prove it to you, it is actually the next item here is telling us if we can loop over the dictionary one element at a time. So in this case here, the the instructions is telling us to print the name and the phone number. So the name here is really simple, because when we iterate over this, we're basically getting the keys. And because the key here is a name, like that, so we can say name, like that. And if we want to print the phone number, we can print it in the same statement, or we can actually print it in a different statement. So being able to actually print the phone number, the phone number happens to be in the value, and which is essentially the first element of the value of this specific key here. So if we want to get the phone number this way, we are going to specify the key, and to be able to get the key, to be able to get the value, we have to get the keys. And the key here is being passed into the square bracket here. And now this is gonna give me, if I print it this way, it's gonna give me the phone number and the email address. But we actually are meant to have the phone number only, not the email address. And because the value here is a tuple of two different elements, how do you think we should get the first element? Is by passing the index of the first element, which is index 0, and then you will see that we have the phone number, the name and the phone number, and then we can actually have a really nice formatting line here to separate the items from each other, like that. And if we want to get the email address, like that, if we want to get the email address, then we have to just specify the next index, which is index 1. If you want, we've done this before, we can actually format it really nicely under the name, so the person would have a phone number and email address. So we do the /t for pushing these guys one tab to the right. And if we run this one more time like that, it looks really nice. Now it's basically asking us to add a new person to the dictionary. So how do you think we should add a person to the dictionary? Well, let's see if we remember this correctly. Was there an add function that takes a key like that and a value, or what do you think? I think the right way to do it is to essentially pass the element like that, the key, I mean, and then the new element here that needs to be passed can be passed on the right hand side of this assignment operator. And if I print this one more time, I guarantee it to you, we will be able to see Hannah here. Here, write the context of the dictionary. Okay, so before we go to the next element, let's just print the dictionary here and look for Hannah to see if Hannah exists or not. Clearly, it does. This entry here exists. So we were successful at adding a new element. Okay, so now how do we write the content? Sorry, I apologize. This is the content. So we need to write the contents of the dictionary into a file of a comma separated format. And it doesn't actually have to be a file that has a .csv, but what I meant to tell you that you can actually have a text file that is inside its own lines. It's already formatted by commas. Text file can have anything, and commas can also be part of the content. So let's see, how do we do this? So first of all, we want to write to a file. If we want to write to a file, we basically have to use the open function, and we have to specify the file name that we want to write to. And this is not necessarily a file that you already created before. This could be an entirely new file. Let's call it dictionary content.txt, like that. And here the important thing is to specify that we want to do writing. So we want to do a write operation to be able to take whatever it is that we're passing, and we're gonna be writing it here into that file. And then once we do this, this is gonna give me a handle, a file writer like that, a file writer like that. And with the file writer, I can write anything I want. I can say write like that. um, hello, hello 2, hello 3, like that. So if I do this, then I must also make sure that I close the file. Um, and if you can see this correctly here, I don't have a text file here that says dictionary content.txt. But what I can do now, if I run this guy here, you will see that I had just created a file, and I was able to um, um, have the content that I specified and even formatted in a way that we said we wanted a comma separated. Um, is this the one? That's not the one. That's not the one. That's the one. Okay. So now I don't want to add these guys to a file. We wanted to do this just to test. What we really wanted was to write this guy to write the content of the dictionary to a file. So what we're gonna do is basically doing the same thing. Instead of we're gonna loop over the dictionary. We're gonna see the name and phone number and then email address. But all we need to do is to get the record, and then to get one element at a time, and then just instead of printing on the screen, what we need to do is use the file handler like that, and then we are going to write. We can write the name like that, okay, and we can also write. You can write it all in one shot, and the truth is, what we can do, we can create a temporary variable here. We'll call it a record, like that, and then we are going to concatenate the name and the phone number, and we can actually specify the phone number by index 0, as we've done here. Nothing really new at all. And then we are also going to concatenate plus, like that. Like this. And we are going to get the last element in the that we need to write, which is at index 1. So by grabbing this guy here, then we're guaranteed to get the content that we concatenated of the name and the phone number and email address all together, and then we're passing it as one line. But before we do that, we also want to make sure that we add a line, an empty line, or we do a /n, so the content are not going to be shoved together one element at a time with all the content. So by making sure that we do the /n here, we're gonna see each element in a separate line. And if we are done with this, and I hope we are, I believe we are, like that. If we run this like this, and we get an issue here. So I'm not sure what is the issue. It says object is not iterable. All right, let's try one more time. Let's populate the dictionary one more time, like that. And let's go here and populate it this way. We still have the same issue. I am not sure. Let me read one more time. Clearly it is I see, because we did not write the /n to a file. I forgotten to use the write function here. So this is gonna work clearly. And if we go back to the file here, and maybe I need to close this file. and reopen it again. And clearly, as you can see here, all the content that we used in the dictionary were already written here, and each one of them is written as a comma separated record. I think this is pretty neat. Here's the second part of this, the second part of that story. How do we load this this file, the file content, one element at a time or one row at a time, like that? And how do we populate a dictionary? What did we? So basically, the next step here is asking us to load the content of this file and load it as a dictionary, and is basically telling us use a comma separate CSV underscore dictionary object, so we know that it's actually a different kind of dictionary, so we already know it's empty, like that. And let's do let's see if we can actually read from the file. So what we need to do now is to get a file reader, because we already wrote the content to a file. So what we need to do is to do a read, like that. And then this is going to give me a file reader, as we have seen before. And this file reader can use can be used to give me one line at a time for a line in the file reader. And if we actually print the current record here, current record, like that. If we print this, we should be able to see the content here printed one line at a time. And I'm gonna just put a I'm gonna put a line separator here for each line, so you and then again I have, right, so I basically need to define this file reader first. And as you can see, the current record is Kate, Tyler, Ryan, Emma, Anna, Megan. All right, so now what we really need to do is not to print. We have to make sure that we take this line here, right, and we need to work with that line. What do we need to do to work with that line? What is it exactly that we need to do? Well, we need to chunk this line into different components. We need to split the line by a comma, right? Because we know that we have three different components, right? So this is gonna give me a list of components like that. And these list of components we could use to populate the dictionary here. So I know that this list of the first one here is supposed to be the key, like that. And I know that the components, the first element at component at this component is gonna be my key. So and as a matter of fact, I'm just gonna hold off on doing this, and then I'm just gonna show you how we can read the components like that. If I print the first element in the line, this is gonna show me nothing, like that. So it's gonna show me just the names. These are my keys. So by making sure that I pass the first element here, then I'm basically saying I am putting a key in that new dictionary, and the values are supposed to be the element at the first index and the element at the second index. So by putting it in these parentheses, that we know for sure that we're actually passing the email address, the phone number and email address together as a tuple, and then we're populating the dictionary one key at a time, and the key would come from the first element that you once you split that line. So if we do this like that, and we're gonna see nothing because because we did not print anything. However, in this way, if we just print the name, like that. It's going to give me all the names. But let me just run this one more time. This is going to give me the names coming straight from the dictionary here. Like here, when we printed this, we received it from the file because we're reading from the file reader. But here, after we populated that dictionary, we were able to read the keys here. And I guarantee it to you, if you care about also seeing the phone number and email address, it's gonna be no problem at all. So I'm gonna use the name, and I'm gonna use the first element. This is gonna give me the phone number, and if I pass the first index, this is gonna give me the email address. There is no magic here. As you can see, we populated an empty dictionary here from scratch. We looped over the dictionary to make sure that the population that we've done, the populating action that we've done was good. We also added a new element, so we know how to add new elements to the dictionary. And then we basically looped over each and every element of them the way we've done before to see if Hannah was also added as well. And then we, here in this situation, in this specific cell, we were able to write the content of the dictionary into a file by creating a file, and we passed the W here, the W flag, to make sure that we are going to create a new file, and we are going to write into that file, and then we use the file writer as a handle here, and the file writer has a function or a method called write, and then we passed the elements of the dictionary as a whole record by concatenating the name and the phone number and the email address, and we concatenated them as one single string, but they are chunked, or they are separated by a comma here as part of the what we call as part of the concatenation process. And then we basically made sure that we have a new line after each record. And as you saw before, this gave us a file here where we have each element has been printed already in the file, and left /n here just to print the next element on a new file. And then in this situation, we basically wanted to read the content of this file. We wanted to read them back into a new dictionary that we called the comma-separated dictionary. So we created a file, and this file, we created a file reader, and we passed the file that we just created when we wrote the content of the dictionary. We passed the R flag here to make sure that the process that we are going through is gonna be a reading process, not a writing process, as opposed to here. And clearly the file reader and a file writer, those are arbitrary names. If you remember, those are our arbitrary names. You could call it a reader or a file reader or FR, F_R, it doesn't really matter. And this file reader gives us an iterator where we can loop over the content of the file, one line at a time. But if you remember, when we wrote that file, we had the elements separated by commas here. These are commas that we needed when we needed to read one line. So we needed to break it into these components, into 1 to 3 elements. So by using the line as a string and calling the split function against that line, and we're gonna split based on this comma, is gonna give me a list. And this is gonna be a list of 3 different components. And as you can see, the first component was the name, which was the key, which we used as a key. And then the second one was a first element, a first component of the value, and the email address was the second component of the value. But if you're reading this in a file, there's no way for the dictionary to know that this is your key, this is your value, this is this, and this is that. So this is what I want you to remember how to do. We passed the first element, we identified it as a key. We passed the first element in the list after we loaded the line. So this is the list here that I'm referring to. So we passed the first element of this list of 3 elements as a key to the new dictionary that was empty here. And now the first 2 elements in that list, which is at index 1 and 2, we made a tuple out of them and we passed it to the key to populate the keys with the values. Now, as you can see, if we print the dictionary here, we see that the first element is the name, which was the key. The second one is the phone number, and the third one is the email address. So it might not seem like a straightforward idea, but we've seen this before. We've seen how to work with files. We've seen how to read a file, how to split the file components into whatever the length of the components are based on the separator that we're using. If the separator is a comma or a space or whatever, we've seen this. So now by seeing how we split that file and passing the components, we were able to populate the dictionary from a file after we wrote the content of another dictionary into a file, and then we were able to suck this content again into a new dictionary. So I hope this was clear. I look forward to receiving some feedback from you, and thanks again for watching. And we'll continue to make progress in the next few videos based on the questions that I receive from everyone. Thanks again for watching.